Hello, my name is Jason Leahy, Executive Director of the Illinois Principals Association. Thanks for joining me for this IPA talk, and I'm fortunate to have with me Steve Diveley, who is the 2023 Middle School Principal of the Year for the state of Illinois, also principal at Hadley Junior High School in Glen Ellen. Correct, Steve? I think I got all those specifics right, correct?
Yeah, that sounds great, Jason. Right on.
All right. That's good. Well, thanks, Steve, for spending a few minutes here with me, just having an opportunity to share your story a little bit and learn more about you and your leadership. So, Steve, I've been asking the POIs this. This is actually different than the other question that I set you up with that we'll get to later, just about more specifics with the job. But we're recording this on August 8th. I know we're getting into the beginning of the school year now. You just referenced before we hit the record button that you had new teachers come in today. That's always exciting. I'm sure they're pumped up with their new jobs, and you probably have some that are entering in this for the first time. But with that being said, I'm just kind of curious, as we're coming off the summer, what do you do for yourself to kind of rejuvenate, recharge, and get ready for the new school year?
Yeah, there was when I was a younger guy, I don't think I needed as much or didn't take as much. You could go 24/7 for a lot of days, but now it's really taking a step back. I do believe in turning off the cell phone, and typically for me personally to shut down, I usually have to leave the area. So we do some traveling locally or just get out of just kind of get out of Dodge and shut things off. Usually 2 or 3 days into a trip, you start to feel your brain kind of loosen up and get creative and all, and start getting some new ideas. That's when I know that the vacation's really working. And then get back at it a week or so. So really, it's just stepping back and not being a principal for a couple days, a week, whatever it takes to rebound.
It's interesting you talk about that. Number one, my wife would probably like for me to talk with you about tips to shut that phone off, like to get away from that and everything else, which is not easy. It's interesting. Like the job's ubiquitous anymore, right? Because of those phones. They're with us all the time now.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to hear you talk about how getting away from that and just letting your brain wander. I'm guessing letting boredom even seep in every once in a while, just so that you have the opportunity to process and think in ways that you wouldn't otherwise, right?
Yeah, boredom's really hard. Again, the role of a principal, you are right. Like you are on point all the time. And then all of a sudden, like you get away and you're in some other city or some other state, and then everything shuts off and it slows down, and you start to think that something's wrong. Or at least I do. You start looking for I got to find something to do. So boredom is actually something I struggle with, but I know that it's good. It's just, that's funny to think about that.
Yeah, you bet. So you've been principal at Hadley about 10 years or so now, Steve. Would you just mind sharing a little bit about your leadership journey, educator journey? What got you to the seat that you're sitting in now?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a middle school teacher for most of my teaching career. I was a middle school teacher.
God bless you, by the way. You guys are special. Middle school kids are fascinating. I've got a couple in my house right now, so I know. But thank you.
You are welcome, man. It's no thanks needed. I love middle school. I love the impact that we make on kids every day. And for some reason, I just feel that at that middle level, when you're 12 and 13 and you're just wandering around looking at the stars above you, like, to me, this is an awesome opportunity to have an impact and to guide our young men and young women. But yeah, I was a middle school teacher for actually not that many years, about 7 years. I was a teacher, and I just got itchy. And I thought, I was watching the work that my assistant principal and principal were doing, and I felt like that's something that I wanted to try. So, I started to go to evening courses and got my Type 75 at the time. And I always share the story with my family. Like, I'm not quite sure I was ready to make the jump. But I had the degree, and I was fortunate to get an interview, and I landed the job, and it was like all of a sudden it was right there in front of you. And I had a nice teaching position, and I had this opportunity to move into administration, and I took that move. So I've been a dean of students, I've been an assistant principal, of course, been a principal, been an athletic director. So at least at the middle level, I've experienced many of the administrative functions that we do. I've been a principal for 18 years, so quite a long time. And I was a principal in Plainfield at one of the middle schools there, and loved it, highly successful. And as you know, if you don't know, if the listeners, the people don't know, Plainfield is like the fourth or fifth largest school district in the state, right?
Yeah.
So it's very site-based, and you're just part of a really large organization. And that's where I really learned how to be, like, I think, a leader and really like take ownership of the position.
And when you say site-based, Steve, you mean you had a lot of autonomy and authority in your position there as principal, correct?
It did. That there's always that push and pull, right? There were 7 middle schools, and so you had to, obviously, for equity, you had to like line up with the other 6.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the upper administration was awesome at letting us like work with the community that the school was in, and so we were able to really design some programs and respond to situations that were unique for me as a leader and for us as a school. And that's where I just really built my confidence and really felt like that leadership starting to emerge.
Yeah.
Jason, I thought I wanted to be district office. So I left Plainfield thinking that I needed a broader range of experience so that I could be successful in a district office interview. And Hadley is in Glen Ellen District 41. There's 5 schools total. I'm the only middle school. We're like the exact opposite of a large kind of exo-urban type district. So I came here thinking this was going to be a short stop and learn some skills and develop what I needed to do. And then I was ready for that third step. And actually, I'm still here. And it's been great. I love this, the community, the school, the job. I'm feeling very positive about it. Don't intend to leave. So that didn't happen. So that's my leadership journey. As far as like positions, I've also been involved in the Association of Illinois Middle Schools. I was right now I'm the current past president. So those other areas for leadership, this right here, this opportunity, working with the IPA and Principal of the Year. So I just think I'd say for anybody, it doesn't always have to be about the position. There's in our field, there are many leadership opportunities for you. It could be in your professional organization. It could be something in the community. It could be volunteering. So I think a lot of us feel a need to do something, lead, and do more. And I was able to find that through different organizations.
Yeah, sure appreciate that. Obviously, it's working out for you, Steve, considering past president of a great organization there with the middle school group who we collaborate with time to time, and of course being now middle school principal of the year here for the state. I'm interested. I want to take kind of back to the beginning here. You mentioned when you were teaching your assistant principal and your principal, and you just saw that their work was kind of interesting there, or something. I'm guessing that, or maybe it was something else. But I guess what I'm curious is, what were you observing that they were doing at the time that you were like, I need to be doing that? And maybe it's because of just something you saw in yourself that seemed to make sense. Like what was it that got you going in this direction at that time?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was really the principal. He was a great guy.
Yeah.
And I guess I never really paid attention to the mountain. Of course, this is pre-computers, or the computers were emerging, right? Mm-hmm. But I guess I never really paid attention to how much he was running around, or the notebooks in his hand, or the stacks of paper on his desk. I'm sure the guy is, he was as overwhelmed or as busy as some of us are on any given day, right? But I saw the focus and clarity that he brought to our teachers, our teams, and our departments, and great relationships. Like he was just really able to have real conversations and motivate. And again, I was a young guy, so it wasn't like I didn't have that clear thought of, man, I want to be like that. I wasn't. wasn't that crystal clear, but I watched him work, and then I watched the partnership that he had with the assistant principal, and it's kind of motivating, right? So when it came time to like, should I think about this career change or not? It was, yeah, I guess kind of like a role model in that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that answer, Steve, more than sometimes you get well, if that person can do it, I can do it, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, which is not necessarily a negative thing necessarily either if it pushes good people into the role, but I appreciate that positive perspective there. So one of the things I'm always curious about from the principals of the year's perspective, Steve, and I think it's a little bit different from person to person just because of each person's style, but from when you just think about school leadership and your work over the years, and obviously you are definitely in that veteran category now that you've been doing this work for a while. What do you think has allowed you to have the success that you've had? I mean, as I read up on you and just preparing here for today, obviously you're somebody high on relationships, you're very engaged, within your learning organization, your team, but also your community, those kinds of things as well. I know SEL is really important to you, but I'm just kind of curious about, what is it that you really tap into from a leadership perspective that helps you get the job done?
All right, well, I kind of got I have two different approaches on that. So the first is I would say for any new administrator is wherever you land, it's a continuum. And what you're doing on day one or what you're doing in year one shouldn't be what you want to be doing in year three. Like we all need systems and structures. I just believe that people want leadership. People want clarity. They may agree or disagree with it. That's not the point. But the point is like, let's be clear. And so I think that when you roll into a new principalship, as I did here, it's obviously you want to get it to where you feel comfortable. You want to have the organization operating in a way that matches the values of the community and yourself and the staff. But those first couple of years are really hard systems and structures. Yes, there's like big picture leadership, but man, you like to make it yours, you're going to be in the trenches. You're going to be working with staff hand in hand to really change the culture to where it works. Mm-hmm. But then you're going to crest like that. You're not going to do that. At least I hope you're not, like every day, every year. There's a point at which you're going to pivot. And then you're like, I have it, right? Like I can feel the building starting to operate in a way that I'm super comfortable with. And then what do I do as a leader? Well, I want to like change my focus and be like, all right, how can I motivate our staff to continue to build on what we've already done? So I would say 10 years is a long time, but who I am right now leading Hadley is a much different person than who I was 10 years ago when I walked in the door. So I think just that leadership and clarity and then being able to pivot is the first one. The second one is, I'm sure you've heard this before, Jason, is like, it's your team.
Yeah.
Like I am a product of my team, right? Like sure. I'm just one guy on the team. I'm not the smartest guy, on the team. I'm just the guy that happens to be able to, or has the opportunity to bring us all together on that. So when you think about all of the books that we may have read and all the presentations or speakers we may have heard about, I love that analogy about, we're on the bus, but are you on the right seat on the bus?
Oh yeah, Jim Collins, right? Yeah.
Right.
Great stuff.
I love that one. I love that one. We're surrounded by great people, but do I have the great people in the right seat? Yeah. But yeah, like right now we're having a great first day with our new staff because of my assistant principals and my administrative assistants and the district office people, et cetera. So go team all the time.
Yeah, love that. So I'm curious, you talk about clarity, and I love that overall thought. So how do you work to maintain clarity? Because you talked about kind of an evolution of leadership in a position over time, and I just to take this back to our work here at IPA, we spend a lot of time talking about culture, systems, and learning. And as school leaders are entering into a position, you kind of have to take things in that order. It's not that you totally ignore any one of those things, but you got to build culture, build relationships, build trust, then make sure your systems and structures are in place that then give you the ability to really tackle some of
That's
the
right.
larger learning types of issues. But along the way, for each one of those, you've got to have clarity of purpose, message, and what it is that you're all about. So what do you find yourself doing to make sure you have clarity of what your expectations and you know what you desire for your learning organization?
Yeah. Well, I wish I had an easy answer. I wish I had an
Sure.
answer that
So
made a lot of
they're
sense,
not all softball questions, Steve. So
right?
yeah,
But okay, so you just got to say it.
yeah,
But
right.
but you got to be careful, right? You got to build the relationships. You got to have the culture. I can't go out there, shooting from the hip and like making big statements when I don't have the people that have already formed those relationships. So you do got to be careful, and you got to gauge where your staff is at. But I had an example last year at which it became clear to me that like it was a job description thing. And it was like people are doing a certain task and what I thought they were doing and what they're doing, like there was a mismatch, right?
Mhm.
And so that was a small team, a small group meeting, but it could also be large group. Is are we being clear? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I wish there was a better answer than sometimes at a staff meeting, like all of us here, we're heading into the beginning of the school year, right? So we're all going to be sitting in front of or working with our entire staff. So when I'm with my entire staff next week, when you're with your staff next week, what's the message? And is it clear? And then like, are there the steps that back the message up? Because as leaders, if we're just muddying about and we're not super clear on what we want, then there's a lot of outliers that are going to take over our work on that. The other one is,
well, go ahead.
sorry.
No. Well, I was just going to offer is as you're sharing there, what it makes me think of is something my wife reminds me of occasionally is unexpressed expectations leads to frustration.
Oh, yeah.
Which usually ends up in us having a discussion, if you know what I mean, Steve. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Not being clear, and then I get frustrated because things aren't happening the way I want them to.
Right.
But really, it was me.
That's right. My fault to begin with, right? Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But that one that phrase that culture eats strategy.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So, I'm a young guy and I hear that phrase. I don't really understand it. I don't really like, what does that mean? Culture eats strategy. Right. And so you talk to people, you listen, you're like, okay, all right. I got to tell you now, like with a little bit of wisdom, oh my gosh, my friends, if you don't have the right culture, it doesn't matter how much strategy we have. It's not going to go anywhere. I'll be out there thinking I'm being super clear on my strategy, but if I don't have the culture, right, what happened? I mean, you either you're going to like you could have a hostile environment, you could have people just nod like this, and then they go and they do their own thing anyway. So, yeah, I'm really living and breathing this idea about the culture and the strategy.
Yeah, I appreciate all of that. I'd be remiss, Steve, if I didn't ask a little bit about your school. If you wouldn't mind just telling us about Hadley and what you've got going on and about your kids.
Sure. Well, I think like I said, we're a 5-school district. Hadley Junior High is large, about 1,200 students,
Oh,
and
wow.
we take 4 elementary schools and we come in. We're a K-8 district. We feed into the Glenbard system, and I would say being the only middle school in the district has its obviously pluses and minuses. The first one is that I'm really proud of is that we own this idea, we own it, that we have to provide something for everybody, right? So in our school, we manage, we have like a multi-needs, like we have our students who need the most support and the most cheering. And then we have on this side, we have our gifted students who are ready to take on the world right now, today, and everything in between. And so I would say if you came to our school, you would be maybe surprised by the number of programs and the staff. And like there are a lot of wheels spinning, a lot of plate spinning, I guess I should say, to offer this community and our kids this wide continuum of what they need. So we're a large school. We have a lot of different programs. We're very diverse. Again, I think that we're on the north side of Glen Ellen. We take in communities of Carroll Stream and Glendale Heights and Lombard and Wheaton. And we have a growing population of Southeast Asian. And it's just bringing tremendous diversity to our building, and that's great. So we love it, we embrace it, and our ESL program is like blowing up, which I know is not unique to just Hadley.
So I'm curious, Steve, you got a lot of different communities that you're working with, a lot of different cultures that you're working with. You know, how do you approach those different groups of people and working to bring them together to move in a cohesive direction then?
So I got to be humble, and I would encourage anybody. I just got to be humble. Like, I don't profess to be the expert on the Muslim faith or what it's like to be someone who's going to have their quinceanera in a year or so. So I just like to express curiosity.
Yeah.
And I think that when our families are met with kindness and they're met with somebody who is friendly and somebody who is like authentic, they're gonna show me the way. Like we're gonna make those connections. One of the best things is last year I was invited to participate in one of the festivals following Ramadan, and it was at a mosque that's down the street. And I went. My wife and I went, and clearly we were the people that didn't fit in. Right. And but man, it went a long way in our community, and I learned a ton. And the food was great. So,
right, absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's just being curious, right? Remaining curious.
Yeah. So just stay humble, stay curious. It's okay that you don't know. And I just appreciate. I'm thankful for the diversity. I think it's good for our kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Steve, I know you've got plenty going on here with the start of the school year, and it's sure been a pleasure talking with you. And I could go on with a variety of other questions just as you've shared your story, but I do have one last one that for you here that I think is important, particularly for maybe those that are considering school leadership as a profession. And, obviously you've been at this a bit, and you've, are at the top of your game right now, top of the game right now. Why in your perspective, should someone that is thinking about it, maybe not thinking about it, should consider school leadership as a career pathway?
Sure. That's a great question. And before I forget, I just got to jump in and say that there is a tangent here. Yeah. We have to take the time to recognize people. We have to take the time to say thank you. I'm thankful for IPA. I'm thankful for the platform. I'm humbled by the honor of the Middle School Principal of the Year. And it's just been a real exciting time in my life. And so I wanted to thank the IPA and the local organization, DuPage County IPA as well. Yeah.
Well, pleasure for sure. Trust me for that.
But you know what? I want to go back to making an impact. So one of the things that stresses or distresses me the most, Jason, is when I'm talking to my younger staff, right? They've been here a few years, they got 5-7 years under the belt. And I ask them what's next. You're not going to be, well, let me phrase that. Most of our people that we work with are not going to be classroom teachers for 45 years. Yeah. Right. Like how many years do they have in front of them until they can retire, until they hit that pension age? Like that's a long time. Right. And you think about the current, the social setting around us. It's just hard for me to think that our youngsters are going to be like still teaching 40 years from now. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. So I ask them frequently, like, what are you thinking? What's your big idea? What's your dream? What's next? And what distresses me is when they say, I never want to be principal. Yeah. And I'm like, and I hear that answer a lot. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, why? What do you, why? And like, oh, it's the conflict. It's the phone calls. It's the parents. It's the, Steve, you're sending us emails at 6 a.m. or you're sending a, like, I don't want that workload. I don't want that. I'm like, oh, no. You got to look at it from, I encourage them, look at it from a different perspective. First of all, look at the impact that we're making on families and on kids and on each other. If you are somebody who wants to make an impact, who feels like they want to leave a little bit of whether you call it a legacy or a reputation, whatever you want, hey man, this is the job. Like, this is great. Secondly, I go back to the principal that I was emulating and thinking about back when I was a teacher. And I said, I look back now and I remember going into his office and seeing the big stacks of paper and seeing kind of that look of stress on his secretary and his face. But like, that's detail. To me, that's just detail work. Like, you can't let the details distract you. It's really about working with people, leading people. Again, I go back to that impact. And I think sometimes what I don't want people to do is to focus on like the negative and don't focus on the detail, because every job has its negative. Every profession has a negative. Instead, let's look at the positive of it. It's a great career. It is. I would support and help anybody who wanted to get into it, because you can make a difference.
Well, and I sure appreciate that. And we might be looking to bat some folks your direction for sure. But I'm just curious about your thought with this. You're talking about people concerned about the conflict or some of the difficult things that they may come across in the position. But don't you feel like, you've obviously had to deal, I'm sure, with some challenging issues from time to time.
Sure.
Probably every day before 10 a.m. it would be my guess, in a lot of cases, right? But don't you feel like it's the challenge, the difficulty, the hard about the position at times, which makes it so special and meaningful, most impactful? Because if it was just easy, anybody could do it, right? I mean, all of that kind of stuff. But if you really want to really have influence and make a difference, it's being willing to lean into those hard things.
Well, sure. Think about, conflict is, no one's going to avoid conflict. If that's like your reason why you don't want to become a principal, like, nobody's going to avoid conflict. You have conflict even if you're not a principal. You have conflict with you in your own family, and et cetera, right? So there are strategies and there are ways to manage conflict. Just if you have the clear-headedness and the willingness and the ability to whether it's training or conversation or whatever you need, but there's ways to manage that. Doesn't necessarily always make it easier, but there's definitely ways to move through it efficiently. And then when you're through the conflict, sometimes, hey, you know what? Sometimes you're right. Sometimes you win. Sometimes it's a very friendly or simple compromise and you end up in the middle, like if it's with a parent or a placement or something like that. But you're absolutely right, is like you have the conflict and then you're on the other side of it. And I'll back up. I was using like conflict with kids or parents, but I would say that if it's a leadership challenge with the staff in your building or in your community, those are really rewarding. Like, again, there's lots of mentors, lots of support. You can persevere through anything. And then you get that school, you come out on the other side and you have that school that you really thought that you wanted, and that you have the school that you're building. You are right. That's the huge, right? Rewarding. That's just very rewarding. That makes you, it's like that great golf shot that you just had, man. It makes you, it makes you come back for more. That's why I play the game.
Yeah. Well, my motto is I get a lot of shots for my money when I'm playing golf, which isn't very often anymore. But anyway, well, Steve Diveley, thank you for taking a little bit of time here and just sharing a little bit about yourself and your good work that you're doing. Congratulations again to you on being named Middle School Principal of the Year for 2023.
I love it, man. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Jason. Thank you for this platform. And go principals, go
That's
team.
Right. That's right. Again, Steve Diveley, Principal Hadley Junior High up in Glen Ellen, 2023 Illinois Middle School Principal of the Year. Again, my name is Jason Leahy, Executive Director for IPA. As always, if there's anything the association can do for you, don't hesitate to give us a call or check us out on the web at www.ilprincipals.org. Take care.